Hi, this is Ray Appen, and this is Boardroom Buddha, my weekly podcast about local businesses, local startups, entrepreneurs, in which we try to find out a little bit about the entrepreneur, a little bit about the business, what's working, what's not working, and in general, get a better idea about a business. A lot of listeners out there might be in corporate. They may be looking for an avenue to start their own business or buy another business. And one of the missions of Boardroom Buddha is to try to give you some information firsthand from people that are out there doing it right now. Sarah Horton has a company called SHiND Shoes, and she lives in Milton. And she's got a very interesting product, a very ambitious product. And Sarah is in the studio today, and I just asked her if she could tell us a little bit about herself and what she's manufacturing. Sarah?
I grew up in New England and spent a lot of time outside. And
you grew up in New Hampshire or Vermont?
I grew up in New Hampshire and went to school in New Hampshire and spent a lot of time with my feet in ski boots. I was a ski racer for a long time through college and a little bit afterwards, and developed a hankering for comfortable shoes after that because ski boots aren't very comfortable. Anyway, I have a master's degree in environmental science, and
I didn't know that.
Before I quit working, which wasn't a planned event, it just seemed like the best solution for our family. But anyway, my last jobs were in doing environmental research on things from how emissions from cars and from manufacturing plants in the Midwest affect soil processes and chemistry in the Northeast, and how that affects the production of greenhouse gases, methane primarily. And the last job I had was working on a NASA project in Washington on tropical deforestation and the rates at which the forest regrows. So anyway, the long and short of that is that I come to this part of my life with an interest in the environment. And part of what this project that I have going on now is trying to make footwear just a little bit greener, because making shoes is a pretty dirty operation generally. There have been some big...
So what? So tell us, what are you doing?
What am I doing?
Yeah.
I'm making shoes, which...
Okay.
Learning to play the banjo and making shoes is what I'm doing in my empty nesting time now.
Perfect.
Which makes me laugh a little bit. But I'm making these boots, and I came about to making these boots from a pair of shoes that my daughter had when she was young, that were a pair of flowered boots that were flowery, but they weren't really juvenile. They didn't look babyish. And when she wore them, people would say, I would wear those if they made those in my size. And so when she grew out of them, we put them up on the shelf with all the other things that you think you can do better than what's out there. You know, you're using a tool and you think, I can make this better than that, and you put it on the shelf for a later date. So now the kids have grown and I need something to do.
So, yeah, I mean, I love your boots. My wife, Christina, bought a pair of them. And I was looking through your website, and one comment that you make is to wear what makes you happy. And I think it's such a cool tagline for a company. So can you describe these boots for our audience? I know they're going to be able to see them a little bit, but they look
like a traditional hiking boot, except they're three of them. I have 4 models. 3 of them are printed with flowery designs, and the other pair is pink. So they're a little bit unusual and not run-of-the-mill. They look a little bit like a Doc Marten, I think, only a little bit more refined, perhaps. So that's what I'm making.
Okay. So you're sitting, you're just in your garage in Milton, like stitching these boots together?
No, no. It takes some machinery to make a pair of shoes, and specialized machinery, and it would be a great. One of my dreams would be to have my own factory at some point, but at this point, I'm subcontracting that out to a factory in Maine, which is a family-owned factory that's been making men's shoes for 3 generations. And so we got a woman's last, which is the mold that a shoe is made on. It's called a last, and obviously men and women have different shaped feet. So we got a woman's last and brought it over there, and they started making these shoes for me on a,
But let's back up for a second.
Okay.
So you got this idea to make boots.
Yes.
And you're prior to that, your reference is ski boots, and so, but you really don't know.
No, I know nothing about.
Okay.
Well, that's not entirely true, because way back in 2001 or 2002, I took a week-long shoemaking class out in the Olympic Peninsula of Washington.
Okay.
And some guy in a yurt was teaching how to make shoes, which was pretty interesting, actually. I learned how to make a shoe. And so I have some basic knowledge. I know how to make a pattern and what the components are needed for making a pair of shoes. But basically, I don't know anything. So I have this idea, and I start searching around on the internet for materials and people who can do it for me. And I started out in New York City with a group that works right in the garment district on the 3rd floor of a place on 36th Street, I think. And they weren't able to really do what I needed. And
so you went to the internet and you started searching for people who make boots or shoes, or
yes, for people who will do private labeling. And there are very few shoes made in the United States, for starters. There used to be a very strong shoe industry in New England, in particular in Maine, but it's all been shipped overseas.
Okay, so one of your goals is to make a domestic.
That's a goal. We'll see if it plays out. It's really expensive to make shoes in the United States. I pay a lot for each of these.
Okay.
And if I made them in Mexico or China or someplace like that, I could bring them to the market at a much lower price.
Well,
but it's important to me to know that A, the environmental laws are being complied with, and B, that people are being paid a fair wage. And it's also better for the environment if the less shipping of materials that goes all around them.
Of course,
the globe.
And I think people are going to be willing to put their money where their mouth is. If you have to pay a little bit extra for some products because they were made domestically, and they help employ people, and they're not poisoning the earth any more than it needs to be poisoned.
Right. I think that's true. And one of the challenges for me is to get these shoes in front of those people.
Okay.
Because that's not true for everybody. A high school kid flipping through their Instagram account isn't going to maybe have the money in their wallet to fork it over. I mean, they may be the people who are interested in crazy shoes like this.
I don't know. Those they pay what, I've heard $500, $1,000 for the new Air Jordans or something.
True. If I could just get a name like Air Jordan, then I'd be all set. Maybe someday.
Okay, so you were searching for a manufacturer. How did you end up with this company in Maine? How'd you find them?
I just found them searching on the internet I looked for manufacturers in Maine. I grew up in New Hampshire. Actually, there was a shoe factory in the town that I grew up in, which is no longer operating. And so I knew where in Maine the shoe industry was concentrated. And so I searched there for factories that were still operating and asked several if they were willing to do a small number of private label production. One of the problems if I did look into doing it in Mexico, and I would have had to make, several thousand pairs of shoes.
Okay.
And I made significantly less than that at this place.
Okay, well, they look extremely well made. They look
They're very well made. They're made.
uber
They're made by
comfortable.
hand. There's a lot of craftsmanship. It's a skilled job to work in a shoe factory, and I think some care has gone into making these shoes. And
No,
go ahead.
it shows. It shows. I appreciate good footwear from my
I bet you do.
my Appalachian Trail hike, and these look like they would be uber comfortable, and they're gorgeous. I mean,
They're just fun. I really wanted to make something fun or a little bit different.
yeah.
If I was going to try to make shoes in the U.S. and I just made the shoes that look like every other pair of shoes that's coming in from China, I don't see what the reason would be to buy them.
Yeah.
So
These are kind of shoes with an attitude. And
yeah.
Again, I love your tagline, wear what makes you happy. And I can see that.
Yeah. Well, it's a serious world out there. You should take a little bit of fun wherever you can find it.
Can get it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, you're getting these things manufactured. What were your thoughts, or what have you gone through? I've always thought that maybe the hardest part of any startup at some point, sales. Someone
Yes.
has to sell, and there has to be a conduit to
If you could produce your magic wand over there and wave it around, then the expert marketing person would show up at my door when I get home. That's definitely the hardest part for me. I love to make stuff. I love to create stuff. I made several thousand costumes for the Milton Theater program.
Yep.
That part comes easy. That's the kind of thing I wake up in the middle of the night and I say, I know exactly what I want to do next on this thing. But getting them out there in front of the right people is a challenge for me.
Yeah, we could start with all the Milton parents, all the parents that have had kids in the Milton drama show need to buy your boots because you sewed thousands of costumes.
Donated a lot of materials to that program.
So Milton moms and dads, if you're out there listening, the website is SHiND Shoes, SHINDIGSHOES, SHindigshoes.com, and Sarah Horton is making them.
I've purposefully tried to not guilt my friends into buying them. I really would like to solve the marketing puzzle. It's definitely something to stretch me, like keep on learning in life, and that's definitely an avenue for me to learn a lot. And I like the challenge of trying to sort that one out.
No, I get it, and I'll guilt them for you.
Yeah, okay.
But so what? I know Etsy, and what have you tried?
Right now, I'm using primarily Instagram, but the way that I've converted the most sales is by people seeing them on someone else and saying, "Where did you get those?" And then I've had the most sales that way.
Word of mouth and
word of mouth and word of eyeball.
Yeah.
That's been the most effective way for me so far, and so the trick has been to get them out. I have them in LA, I have them in San Francisco and Pittsburgh. Oddly, I'm doing very well in Pittsburgh. Boston, New England.
Really? And are they finding you? How are they finding you? Online.
Well, I planted a few out in those places, and then they find me through that, and then they look it up, and so it's actually. I just sold a pair that had an order to come in this morning from a pair that someone's seen somewhere. And 2 days ago, I sold a pair to someone who works in costuming or makeup or something at Fox in LA, and she'd just seen them on someone. So
okay.
So that's been the best way for me so far. I have played with buying Google AdWords, and I'm looking at selling through Amazon, which is an interesting way of doing it. They have a lot of things that I didn't know. They do more than just sell their own things. You can have your own store there, and they'll take care of all of the fulfillment and shipping and all that stuff for you. They take a large chunk.
How far are you into the checking out the Amazon?
Well,
all the hoops and everything.
I'm ready to go if I decide to do that. I know what what's going to cost, what it will cost me, and what what it will do for me. What it does do for you is that you give them they'll do all the fulfillment for you, and people can use Amazon Prime, so they have free shipping and free returns and all of that stuff, which is easy, but you pay for it.
Do you have to, I imagine you have to guarantee a minimum amount of product, or is there a volume threshold there? Or?
No, but you're going to do better rating wise with Amazon if you never run out of anything. So you have to keep track of your inventories.
So where is your inventory?
I've sold so far. I've received my first batch of shoes in December, so I was a little bit late for the holiday shopping. But now I've sold about a third of my inventory so far, which I think is pretty good for someone coming out of the blue into the fashion market, which is pretty hard to break into.
I bet.
So I feel okay about it, you know.
Okay. Have you reached out to any, say, either chains of any retail outlets that are chains, or
I have not
looked at that?
I haven't done that because these are so expensive to make that if I sell them to a retailer, I'm not gonna. I mean, my margin is already really small unless they're going to sell them for $900 or.
Okay, so let's go ahead and talk about what's the range of the retail of what you sell your shoes for? What are they?
I sell them all for $275.
Okay.
Which is not that much more than it cost me to make them at this point. I need to get the cost of manufacturing down a little bit, which I can do if I get the volumes up some.
We have to make money. You have to operate at a profit, Sarah.
I know I have to. I'm aware. But
so what are these?
To get established, you may have to take a little bit of a hit to get going.
No, I get that. What are these boots made out of?
These boots are made out of, well, these two, the red and the blue. There's something that's kind of interesting about them. They're digitally printed, which, from my perspective, is a small or medium step forward toward greener software because they're not dyed. And the process of dyeing leather, if you can envision a huge vat of liquid dye and hides swirling around in there and then coming out dripping to dry, and it's just dirty. The dyes are very toxic and it's dirty, and there's all this leftover dye when you're done. And the leather is not dyed, it's tanned, which is also a dirty job. But with the printing, you just take a tanned leather and print directly on it, and it's just a cartridge like in your printer that you have for your computer, and it just prints out exactly the amount of ink that they need, and the inks are less toxic than the dyes.
Now, are they durable? Have you?
I have a pair of these that I've worn probably 250 miles in the rain and the snow, and they're I think the thing that might happen is that they could get scuffed off because it's not dyed all the way through. Okay. It's laid onto the top, but mine are.
Yeah, my wife's pair still seem brand new, and she's had them for a good while.
Yeah, I wouldn't offer them for sale if I didn't feel like they were going to hold up, and I did put them through a pretty good testing process before I.
No, they look uber comfortable. So before the interview, I did a little bit of research, and apparently Sarah Blakely, who started Spanx, and is now a billionaire, apparently, started that company with $5,000 out of her savings from her copier sales route.
Yeah.
So you don't need to tell me how much you've spent on this, but if there's some entrepreneurs out there and they're thinking of starting something that's even remotely similar, can you talk about expenses as specifically as you want to?
Well, it's expensive. The most expensive part is prototyping things, because you have to iterate that and you got to do it over and over again until you come up with the product that you want. And those one-offs from a factory, you're gonna pay for those, because they can't just put it on the line and have it done. It's got to be somebody individually making that thing. But I will tell you the math that I've done in order to justify my project. And it's kind of funny. It has to do with hair. It's like I'm not
Okay.
very good at having my hair cut or anything, and I have a head full of gray hair. And so I've done the math that if I'd had my hair done every 6 or 8 weeks for the last 20 years, that I would have spent twice as much as I've spent so far making these shoes. So, and I also cut Tom's hair. So whatever we save for that. So
How can you argue with that logic?
well, you can't. It's lock solid.
It's devious. And speaking of Tom, I mean, how is it working with? Has he tried to give you advice, or how's your husband?
He's been supremely supportive of me on this project. He is very supportive and appreciative and full of good advice. He has a lot of experience in business, and so he's.
What's the best advice he's given you so far on your boots? Or
the best advice is you're gonna you miss 100% of the shots you don't take. So go for it.
Okay, love it.
Can't win if you don't play the game.
Okay.
So he's behind me.
Excellent. Excellent. So can you think of any things that you ran into bad things or that you really hadn't anticipated that just really threw you for a loop? Or
well, I did have in this first, I would say it was a learning experience for both the factory and for me on the first round of manufacturing, and we had a few fumbles that needed to be corrected that set things back a little bit time wise, which is how I missed the whole holiday shopping time.
Mm-hmm.
But it's learning for everybody, and it's to be expected, I think. So
Okay. So you got to make the mistakes to figure it out.
You don't make too many, but it's true. You learn from your mistakes, and it's okay.
Okay. So if anyone in the audience is interested in carrying this amazing line of boots that make you happy, you need to reach out to Sarah at shindigshoes.com. She's not asking me to help promote this for her or paying me for it, but these are really amazing looking shoes. Let's see. Advice. You have been involved now. How long have you been at this?
Well, not counting my trip to the Pacific Northwest to take the shoemaking class back in 2002, this really hard at work at this particular project for a couple of years.
Okay.
And when our oldest child went off to college, and obviously it was clear to me that I needed something to do. And to go back into environmental science was going to require a lot of retooling, and it was wasn't what I wanted to do. After reflection, that was just not the avenue I want to take. So I looked at that shelf where we put all of those things that we collected that we thought maybe we could make better than somebody else, or that we were interested in. And I worked on a couple of them and just sort of followed them through step by step.
What were some of them?
One of them was making bicycle safety wear. When that was with a friend of mine, one of my ski team friends, who is both a emergency room physician and a bicycle commuter.
Okay.
And that combination, she became very interested in things to make bicycle riders more safe on the road in the dark and the light as well. And so we took a pretty deep dive into that, but neither of us are engineers in any way, and we didn't have the knowledge and skills to really come up with something new and different that wasn't already out there.
Okay.
So, and all the while I was just sort of still working on the shoes, finding learning about printing leather and finding someone who could do it, and making test samples and designing the designs. And I did that too. So just finding ones that were going to work for shoes. And it just sort of happened gradually. And then it got to a point where I had some prototypes that I liked, and I had a factory that was willing to do it. And it's kind of a now or never kind of thing. Like,
Okay.
we've progressed, we've stepped this project up to this point, and either we're going to make them and see if there's a market for them, or put it back on the shelf. And it just seemed like, why not?
Okay. So I guess that's really a hard junction or crossroads, because
It's a leap of faith, or leap of whatever. I don't know. It's a leap.
and at some point you're going to, I guess at some point you're going to say, well, I need to do X or Y.
Yeah, I'm going to come to another crossroads.
We need to
either,
get to a certain volume or something
for
like
sure.
that, or
And
scale.
That may be mean taking my operation offshore, or it might mean opening my own factory, or, I don't know what that crossroad is going to be.
You want my advice?
Yes, I'll take everybody's advice.
It looks like I think one thing, if you're going to make a product or offer a service, there needs to be something unique about it. That it needs to be a better mousetrap in one way, shape, or form, and I think you have that. I think really the key is working on taking it to market.
Yeah.
It looks to me like your product's viable. They're awesome shoes. And
well, if anybody out there has, marketing advice for me, I'm absolutely, totally open to receiving all of that.
oh my goodness, you're talking to someone who's put one of his hats is selling advertising and marketing. But yeah.
Well, have at it. That's the hard part for me. So
Sarah Horton is waiting for your orders.
Yes, I'm waiting.
She is, her website is shindigshoes.com, SHINDIGSHOES.com. And Sarah, I appreciate you for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate that.
Yep. And I will help you every way I can going forward. And I want to thank the audience for listening to the show. And we are always looking for people to interview that have a new business or are starting something and trying to make a difference. Contact me at rayappin@gmail.com. I'll be glad to talk to you. And thank you for listening to Boardroom Buddha. Have a great day.